Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into the true, fascinating, and honestly heavily misunderstood origins of one of the most influential genres in American history, blues music. Drawing from the work of folklorist and historian Lamont Pearley Sr., we are going to explore how the brutal realities of Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the Great Migration literally birthed the blues. As you'll see, this music wasn't just a cool new sound. It was a vital historical record of survival.
Okay, let's jump right in and completely shatter a pervasive myth. There's this super common misconception out there that the blues is slave music or that it was born directly on antebellum plantations. But the reality? It's completely different. The blues actually emerged during the late 1860s, right in the post-emancipation period. It was cultivated by the descendants of enslaved people, absolutely, but it was fundamentally the expression of freed African Americans. It was born during a vicious, violent era of vigilante justice, as freed men and women tried to navigate the treacherous new landscape of Reconstruction and Jim Crow.
So, here is exactly how we'll be tracing the evolution of the blues today. First, the myth of slave music. Second, the bad man folk hero. Third, Parchment Farm convict leasing. Fourth, levees and the boll weevil. And finally, the shift from rural farming to urban life.
Section 1. The Myth of Slave Music. Voices of the Freed.
When you think of the early legends of the genre, people like Charlie Patton, Reuben Lacey, Son House, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, and even B.B. King in later generations, they were not singing about bondage. Instead, their lyrics were reflecting the harsh, day-to-day realities of farming and sharecropping as freed people. The real subjects of early blues? They were cotton bales, crops devastated by the boll weevil, hanging out in juke houses, and the relentless, exhausting cycle of sharecropping. That's where the architects of the blues actually got their start.
Section 2. The Bad Man Folk Hero. Defying White Supremacy.
To really understand this, we have to look at what happened to the justice system after emancipation. During slavery, plantation owners operated their own internal systems of punishment. But suddenly, freed Black Americans were being tried in public courts. And guess what? The jurors, the lawyers, the judges, they were all entirely white. In this deeply biased environment, a brand new archetype popped up in the 1890s called the bad man. This figure represented the new Negro mindset, a rough, tumble, defiant individual who openly challenged white supremacy. Because of the systemic oppression they faced every day, this rebel figure was celebrated in blues music, eventually becoming a folk hero and sometimes a martyr. And this wasn't just made up either. Real-world events fed directly into these folk hero narratives. Just take a look at this clipping from the St. Louis Daily Globe-Democrat from way back in 1895. It details a fatal barroom argument where a man named William Lyons was shot by Lee Sheldon. This actual historical murder inspired an entire wave of blues and folk songs about a bad man character named Stagger Lee. It became an absolute standard of the genre, famously recorded by artists like Lloyd Price. It just goes to show how the blues acted like a living newspaper for Black communities.
Section 3. Parchment Farm, convict leasing, slavery by another name.
After the Civil War, the state still needed free labor, and white supremacists desperately wanted to regain control over Black bodies. So the convict lease system functioned like a trap. Black men were aggressively targeted and convicted at sky-high rates for incredibly minor offenses. Then the state would charge fees to private lessees who took the prisoners in. Basically, it was kidnapping freed Black men to provide forced, free labor. The epicenter of this whole operation was the Mississippi State Penitentiary, notoriously known as Parchment Farm. It was a brutal reality that ensnared legendary blues musicians like Booker White and Leadbelly. Actually, it was at these very prison farms that historians John and Alan Lomax recorded traditional Black music for the Library of Congress.
Section 4. Levees and the boll weevil. Environmental catalysts.
Remember that newspaper clipping we talked about with Stagger Lee? It specifically mentioned the victim was a levee hand. Well, levees are these massive earth embankments built along rivers to prevent flooding, and let me tell you, maintaining them was grueling, backbreaking, and extremely dangerous work. It was a massive physical undertaking that folks often described as straight-up forced labor. Because it was such a traumatic part of the Southern Black experience, working the levee became a huge foundational theme in blues music. Legends like Mississippi Fred McDowell sang about it, and Memphis Minnie perfectly captured the existential dread of it in her classic track, When the Levee Breaks.
But beyond the levees, there was another massive environmental catalyst, and it was a tiny little insect. By the turn of the century, the boll weevil started to absolutely devastate the Southern cotton industry. Delta blues pioneer Charlie Patton recorded Mississippi Boll Weevil Blues in 1929, singing about planting an entire crop and not even getting half a bale in return. This wasn't just a minor agricultural hiccup, you guys. It was an environmental catastrophe that ruined the livelihoods of thousands of black sharecroppers. The boll weevil was literally one of the primary catalysts that drove people to pack up and leave the South entirely.
Section 5. Rural Farming to Urban Life, the Great Migration. Starting around the mid-1940s and into the 50s, African Americans migrated en masse to the Midwest, the West, and the Northeast. Back in the rural South, the Delta blues was very acoustic, right? It was rooted in the dirt of plantations and sharecropping. But as millions moved to places like Chicago, including musical pioneers like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, the music electrified. It adapted to the gritty urban terrain. Plus, this migration offered a real chance to become professional recording artists. Howlin' Wolf is a perfect example. He didn't just sing the songs of the newly migrated, he completely modernized the genre by running his band like a legit business. He famously paid his band members a regular salary and even offered them health insurance benefits. Talk about a game changer.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a powerful thought to chew on. As we've seen, the creators of the blues were freed black men and women using music to document their survival through Reconstruction, the terrors of Jim Crow, and the exploitation of the prison farm system. These songs are amazing historical documents of a specific era for sure, but for many historians today, they also speak directly to systemic challenges, like mass incarceration and inequality, that persist right into the present day. How do those historical struggles mirror the challenges of today's new Jim Crow era? The roots of the blues aren't just dusty history, they are a living, breathing testament to resilience. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the profound origins of this incredible American art form. See you next time.